Welcome to the Crown Heels Kitchen. Today we're going to make pizza wheels, and what's really important is learning all about the flour and the yeast and the different functions of the ingredients. We're going to learn about that today. Firstly, before any practical lesson, what's really important is we must clean the work surface with the antibacterial spray to make sure that we reduce all bacteria to a safe level. Excellent. So, for bread, we require strong flour, we need a tablespoon of oil, here. We require a teaspoon of yeast. Now this particular yeast is called fast action dried yeast. So this works by warm water being placed into the bowl, and there is different types of yeast that you can get, but this is ideal for the time that we have within our lesson. We also require half a teaspoon of salt. Now when you use the salt, it's really important to pour it slowly and to make sure that it's nice and flat and levelled spoon. We don't want it as a heaped spoon because that's not the correct measurement, and it will have an effect on the ingredients if we don't do it properly. And I'm also going to add just half a teaspoon of sugar, and that will just give it a bit more flavour and also help develop the gluten when we put that in there, along with a jug of water. Now in here there's 125 millilitres of warm water. Now it's really important that it's warm and not hot nor cold, because yeast needs to activate in warm conditions. So that's roughly around body temperature, which is about 37 degrees. If it's any higher than that, what will happen is the yeast won't activate. You'll actually kill the yeast, which prevents you from having your bread dough nice and big and rising. If it's too cold, it's exactly the same, it won't work, okay? So for that, I just require a butter knife, and all I'm going to do is just to mix those ingredients together. And I'm just going to create a little well in the middle of the bowl. That's a hole to me and you. And I'm going to pour in the water. I'm going to do it all at once. I'm going to trust my measuring skills. Okay. Now with that, all I would like you to do, nothing fancy, is I just want you to draw big circles in the bowl for me like this. And what will happen is that the mixture will start to form a dough, as you can see. Now at this stage, it might get a little bit tougher, so your arm might ache. That's good, it means we're doing it right. When it starts to stick to your knife, what I want you to do is to use your fingers, scrape it off and put that to one side. We're now going to do the fun bit. You now need to use your hands. What I want you to do is to squeeze the dough, okay? Squeeze it with your hands like this, and I want you to imagine that the dough is a dishcloth. And what you're trying to do, as well as squeezing it, you're trying to clean the bowl. So all of the crumbs and all of the pieces form together like this into a dough. And if you do this really successfully, you will end up with a relatively clean bowl. Now don't get rid of that bowl because we are going to need it in a moment. Now, what we're going to do now is something called kneading. Kneading is where we're trying to develop the gluten, okay? Now the gluten is the protein that's found in strong flour, and what that does, it allows the dough to become stretchy. The word is elastic, so it has elasticity in there. The more that we stretch it, the more elasticity it will have. In other words, we'll have better bread. And kneading, we can do this in two different ways. The first way of kneading is using your knuckles, okay? So what we do, using the knuckles, we stretch the dough. Don't tear it, I don't want you to tear it, I just want you to stretch the dough, pull it back, turn it 90 degrees, okay? I'm going to repeat that. Stretch, pull it back, turn it 90 degrees. And that's one way of kneading. The second way of kneading is using the palm of your hand. Same way, stretch the dough, don't tear it, pull it back, turn it 90 degrees. Again, that palm, stretch, pull it back, turn it 90 degrees. Now when we do this, this is what it looks like quite fast. I'm not asking you to do it fast, I'm asking you to be accurate. But I do want you to try both ways of kneading, okay? Because I can't do that way with knuckles, I find that really, really difficult. But you need to find what's your best way, all right? Now we will knead this for approximately 10 minutes. And what we're trying to do is make it nice and smooth. Now to know when it's done, what we will do is we'll stop kneading. We will press with our finger like this. If it's done, the dough will bounce back to its original shape. So that hole that I've made will disappear, okay? Obviously I've only been doing this for a few seconds, so that's nowhere near done. So I need to do this for about 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes of kneading, the dough will be done. What we're going to do is we're now going to put it back into that original bowl that we had. And what we need to do is we now need to let it prove. Prove is resting time to allow the yeast to activate so that it will double in size and it will go even more super soft. What I do need to do is just need to put some cling film over the bowl like this. And that will create a nice sealed environment so that it will stay warm. It's best to leave the dough or the bowl in a warm environment, ideally on top of a cooker if your cooker's already on, and if it's particularly warm you could put it near the window and it will allow it to prove. We need to let this for about 10 to 15 minutes. So when your dough has proved, you'll see that it's got some condensation on it and that the cling film itself will actually make a dome, and that's because of the reaction of the yeast, and the byproduct of that is called CO2. So the CO2, the carbon dioxide, has been released into this bowl because the dough has been rising, and you can see once you take it off how nice and big the dough has actually increased. Now what we're going to do now, it's very important, we must flour our work surface. Now please hold your finger over the flour shaker, put a little bit of flour on the work surface. Your dough should be freely movable, so if you can't move it easily, you've not got enough flour. And also pop a little bit on your rolling pin. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll this dough into a rectangle, or as best as we can. It doesn't matter too much if we don't. Now when you roll, don't do this, because the problem with that, I've now got a big thick edge, it's not nice and even. So what we do is we roll it towards ourselves and we turn it 90 degrees. Roll it towards ourselves and turn it 90 degrees. And we keep doing this till we get it as big as possible. Now because we're not making pizza, I don't need it into a circle, okay? I want it in a good long rectangle as best as I can. So the best thing to do is to keep rolling from left to right, okay? And top to bottom, so we can get it as big as we can. The larger we get this, the more pizza wheels we're gonna have, which is really, really important, because we want as many as possible. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do mine quite quickly. You can take yours a bit more time with yours. Don't make it too thin. You want it about 1/2 centimetre in thickness. Otherwise, all that will happen when we actually roll this, it will actually split. So it's not quite a rectangle, but you can see I've got a longer edge along here, and it's a lot smaller in this way. Now what we do is we then take some passata and we put 2 tablespoons in the middle to start with. We can always add more, but you can never take it away, it makes it tricky. Using the back of the spoon, I want you to spread the passata, but leave around a 2 centimetre gap from around the edge. Now the reason we leave that gap is so that when we roll it, all of the ingredients don't fall out of the edge. Now I've had to add a little bit more passata here, just to make sure that I'm covering the entire surface. But you can see I've got that gap and I've got that edge that hopefully will prevent any of the ingredients falling out. Now you don't have to just do cheese. I'm doing a very basic pizza wheel. You could add different fillings in. For example, you could add sweet corn, you could add any cooked meat like chicken, you could add peppers. The key thing for this is not to make a mound. So when you pour the cheese, I don't want a big mound in the middle like that. We need to make it as flat as we can. So here, I'm just spreading the cheese out, as you can see. I've got a little bit more to cover here, but I'm making it nice and flat and level. I do not want a mound of ingredients. Don't worry if you make a bit of a mess. That's all part of the fun when we're cooking, okay? So I've got this. Now, this is what's always tricky. We're now gonna roll it, okay? And what you do is you start at the bottom, the side closest to you, just start to fold the middle like this, and then with your hand you're going to go in a movement that goes out towards the sides like this. I'm going to show you nice and slowly. So all I'm doing is rolling like this, rolling away, and I'm going to roll and roll and roll and roll until I end up with something that looks like that. Now the end pieces, so the first 2 inches on the edge, there's nothing wrong with them, but they don't have as much filling in them, so they're not too to worry. Don't throw them away because they're still good to eat. Now on your baking tray, I've got some parchment paper. These will expand in size. These will go a lot bigger, so we do need to space them out on our baking tray. But these ones, I'm not too fussed, so I'm going to put those fairly close together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut these into roughly about 1 inch in width, okay? So to do that, I'm just going to do my knife, and I'm I'm just going to cut these roughly. Don't get a ruler out, just do it roughly. Roughly an inch like this. I'm using the claw method, you can see here to make sure. And then you've got these lovely little pockets of pizza inside. So I'm going to place these on my tray and I'm going to space them out. As I said, they will increase in size, so it's important that I space them out like this. I'm just going to turn that one that way. And these are the pizza wheels. Now we're going to place these in the oven for approximately 20 minutes. Don't worry, the cheese will fall out of them. That's the idea behind it. They look very rustic. They don't look very neat and pretty, these kind of things. But I'm going to pop them in the oven for 20 minutes and I'll show you the finished result when they're out.